Today, we're diving into a pretty wild story about finance, politics, and, well, survival. According to Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump, they were basically kicked out of the traditional banking world, and that, they say, is what forced them to become some of the biggest champions of cryptocurrency out there. Their story, as they tell it, didn't start with a choice. It all kicked off with a single letter that changed absolutely everything. So, it all starts right here. Just try to imagine that for a second. You walk into your office and there's a letter waiting for you from a bank you've worked with for decades telling you you're done. According to Eric Trump, that's exactly what happened. This single moment is the spark that lights the fire for their entire story. And just look at the scale of this. I mean, we are not talking about one or two personal accounts here. Eric Trump says it was 300 business accounts. That's everything, their golf courses, their restaurants, the whole shebang. In their eyes, this wasn't just some warning shot. This was a move designed to paralyze their entire company. So you have to ask, right, how did they take this? Well, they didn't see it as a normal business decision. Not at all. In their telling, this was, in the words of Donald Trump Jr., a targeted strike. A move they believe was all about politics, designed specifically to cripple them. And that brings us to the key concept in their story, debanking. The idea here is that these accounts weren't closed because of some financial risk. Nope, it was because of politics. As Eric Trump put it, he believes it happened because the bank simply didn't like his father's political philosophy. From their point of view, the stakes couldn't have been higher. Eric Trump claims the real goal was to completely take their business apart by cutting off its ability to make and receive money, what he calls its payment rails. He said the whole experience of fighting through it was just hell for a solid year. And here's where Donald Trump Jr. zooms out. He reframes their personal fight into this huge warning for everyone. His argument is, look, if a family with our resources can be targeted like this, then who's safe? Any small business owner could be next. He positions their struggle not just as their own, but as a fight for the American way of life. So this whole conflict, they say, became a turning point. Getting pushed out of the old system didn't just cause a huge problem. It actually forced them to find a solution in a totally new financial world. And this timeline really lays out that claimed transformation. Eric Trump describes them as hard asset people, focused on things you can touch, like hotels and real estate. But then, bam, the debanking hits. And what happens? It acts as this catalyst that forces them to discover and then become huge champions for decentralized finance, or DeFi. This line from Donald Trump Jr. really captures that defiant spirit in their story. The whole idea is that the very institutions that tried to knock them out of the game ended up creating their most powerful new opponents, now armed with this brand new technology. So, once they were in this new space, their whole perspective started to change. They began to see crypto as more than just a backup plan. They started to see it as a fundamentally better system. So what exactly is their big case for it? At its heart, their argument is a showdown, the old world versus the new. They paint big banks as slow, confusing, and self-serving, and they contrast that with DeFi, which they say is super fast, totally transparent, and open to everyone. It's a system built for institutions versus a system they say is built for the individual. And they argue this slowness isn't some accident. According to Eric Trump, banks actually make money from it. He claims they can hold on to hundreds of billions of dollars in transfers over a weekend and earn interest on that money. Interest that you, the customer, never see. And in his view, that's one of the biggest problems with the old system. So that critique of the old system leads them to this really big vision for the new one. They see crypto as more than just a payment system. They see it as a tool to create a democracy of finance, something that could totally change who gets to create wealth. So how would that even work? Through this thing called asset tokenization. The idea is you can take a super valuable asset, like a skyscraper, a famous painting, or even the royalties from a hit song, and you can split its ownership into thousands of tiny digital pieces, or tokens. This would let regular, small-scale investors own a piece of things that were totally out of their league before. And Eric Trump uses this question to show just how ambitious this idea is. He's talking about a world where the profits from massive assets aren't all stuck with a few giant corporations, but are spread out widely among all of humanity. From there, their argument zooms way out, from individual investors to a global competition. They start to frame American leadership in crypto as not just a good idea for the economy, but as a critical issue of national security. To make his point, Eric Trump brings up the GDP of the US and China. He argues that America's economic power has always been built on the strength of its financial markets. And to keep that edge, he says, those markets have to be modernized with new technology, like crypto. Their geopolitical case is pretty straightforward. Donald Trump Jr. sees a threat, nations that are trying to challenge the US dollar. His solution? Use US dollar-backed stablecoins to actually reinforce the dollar's power around the world. The stakes, they warn, are massive. We either lead or we let this new industry be run by our competitors in Asia or the Middle East. Okay, so finally, their narrative shifts to the future. They argue it's not enough for this technology to just exist. Its place in the American financial system needs to be made permanent and secure. And the only way to make it permanent, in their view, is through legislation. Donald Trump Jr. makes the case that you need Congress to pass clear laws for crypto, not just have rules set by executive orders or different agencies that can change their minds. And why is that so important to them? Well, they worry that without actual laws, a future administration could just show up and reverse all the progress, undoing everything, with, as he says, the stroke of a pen. And that leaves us with this final, massive question. We've just heard this whole story that paints cryptocurrency as a tool for financial freedom, one that was born out of a political fight. So as this technology gets more and more mainstream, the central tension is still there. Will it truly decentralize power for everyone, or will it just become a new arena for the same old political battles?